So I'm going to start off with the most recent claims surrounding rape culture, and that is how rape is portrayed in our media. More specifically, feminists will claim that because we use rape in our jokes, in our humor, in our advertising, we insinuate rape to essentially make money and make a profit, that we condone rape and that we accept it, and we are desensitized to the suffering of rape victims. Let me start off this video by saying that it's pretty obvious we as society have drawn a line between what we deem as acceptable and what we deem as unacceptable, with a very large gray area in between. So the question must be asked, what separates an act of rape from, say, someone joking about rape, or someone portraying a rape scene in a porno? What is the difference between those two? Why do we deem one act as immoral, evil, and deserving of jail time, and the other as perfectly legal and acceptable in certain cases? There are multiple things that distinguish an act of rape from a simulated rape in a porno, for instance. One thing, which may seem like a no-brainer to a lot of you, is that one is within the realm of fantasy and the other is in reality. That sounds so intuitive and so easy, but you have so many people forget this very simple fact when they claim that, let's just say, Grand Theft Auto encourages people to beat up hookers and run them over with their cars. Well, gee, I wonder why most gamers who play Grand Theft Auto don't automatically go out, steal a car, and beat up a hooker and run them over with it. It's because that is within the realm of fantasy. We gamers, at least for the most part, are sensible enough to know that that is not acceptable in reality. And likewise, there are people who fantasize about rape scenarios. But they are also sensible to know that, in reality, rape is a horrifying and evil act. And they would not do such a thing in reality. It may sound strange and scary to a lot of people that there are sections of society that fantasize about doing dark and horrible things that would get us into a lot of trouble if we were to act upon those urges. But you know, that's not that uncommon. In fact, for me, I love going on Call of Duty and shooting people up. I would never do it in real life, of course. There's a very large difference between my picking up a controller and picking up an AK-47, me shooting someone in a video game, and me ending someone's life in reality. There's a difference between simulated rape in a porno and rape in real life. The two cannot be comparable. And to suggest that one would lead to the other is a very large stretch of the imagination, I think. Using my example again, you don't see normal people go up and try and emulate what they saw in Dexter just because they watched the show, right? You don't see people who play Grand Theft Auto, generally speaking, go up, jack a bunch of cars, and beat up a bunch of hookers, now do you? And likewise, you don't see people who enjoy simulated rape scenarios go out and rape people, right? And the reason for that is because most sane people understand the difference between fantasy and reality. And you're going to have to forgive my ignorance on this, but I have really yet to see a lot of things actually depicting rape in society that were supposed to send a positive message. Like, you have songs like Blurred Lines, which are rapey in implication. And it is really just that, implication open to interpretation, right? But have you ever heard of, like, a rap artist making a song about how he raped a bitch? Like, that would not fly in society. People were already getting up in arms about the Robin Thicke song. Something that outright, like, encourages rape would be shot down immediately. The only sympathetic portrayal of a rapist that I've seen was in A Clockwork Orange, and that wasn't even really sympathetic to the act of rape itself. When you look at news stories about rape victims and alleged rape victims, has anyone ever really said, "Oh, I'm glad that they got raped"? Ha 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 ha. No. And in fact, I argue we go too far sometimes in our pursuit of justice for rape victims and alleged rape victims. When you look at things like the Duke Lacrosse case and how four completely innocent guys, were arrested based on hearsay evidence. If anything, the portrayal of rape in our media is more indicative of an anti-rape culture. What about the argument that it desensitizes us to the suffering of rape victims, or it trivializes their suffering? Well, again, this is within the context of the media in question. If we're talking about rape jokes, it's within the context of comedy. If we're talking about a movie, it's within a context of a movie. Like, you wouldn't say that violence in movies would trivialize the lives of innocent people, right? Because we portray violence in movies all the time, and nobody seems to give a shit. But somehow, when there is a rape scenario in a song, wow, suddenly that trivializes the suffering of rape victims. And I'm really getting exasperated with this type of logic because, like, what harm is Daniel Tosh doing with his offhand comments about a girl getting raped in his comedy act compared to someone who is actually committing a rape? There is a huge fucking difference. The difference is fucking night and day. And you can say, well, someone might be easily triggered by his offhand comments, by their personal experiences. Well, I can be easily triggered when someone discusses the very sensitive topic of race because I am Asian. So does that mean you should never discuss racism just because I am someone of color and it might easily trigger me? Should we never mention the words war or combat just because it might trigger the sensibilities of war veterans that have suffered through things like this? I mean, how fucking far do you expect me to bend in the name of political correctness? I think the main flaw of this argument comes with the whole simplified logic of monkey see, monkey do. Now, I'm not even necessarily saying that feminists are wrong that media affects us, because it does. It's just we don't automatically emulate what we see on television or hear in our songs or hear on the news because we are generally sane people. And sane people understand that when you hear something, when you see something, you have to put it through your own mental processes, your own moral codes, and yes, the distinction between fantasy and reality plays a very large part of this, and you decide for yourself if that's something that you would like to emulate or if that's something you want to avoid. And in the case of rape, and in the case of violence, these are generally things that we want to avoid. Personally, I think I'm in the minority of people who don't accept this concept of rape culture, at least not in the way that feminists present it. And if rape culture was really so prevalent, if we really didn't take these experiences of rape victims seriously, why would we give it so much mainstream media attention? Why did Emma Watson's speech gain so much positive press and viral video status if we as a society don't take rape seriously? And in the worst case scenario of like victim blaming, I already did a whole video on this, but you know, people keep saying, oh, you're trivializing the experiences of a rape victim when you criticize that they didn't take any precautions. Or you're putting the burden of proof on them to take measures to protect against people. Of course we are. We all have that burden to protect ourselves against people who do nasty, horrible things to us. We put locks on our doors because we don't want people to rob our house. We put car locks and bike locks on our vehicles so they don't steal them. And in the case of rape, I don't think it's too unreasonable to suggest that we don't go out to a random stranger's house without telling anyone, and we don't take anyone with us, you know? But, hey, I guess I'm just a rape apologist, right? Give me a fucking break. May the truth always be heard. Peace.